Hey guys, Gary J here, and today we're looking at a combat blade here. And this is a blade that was made for World War II by the Western Company, and it's called a G-46-8, which 8 refers to 8-inch blade, so it's a pretty long blade on this right here. So this one was solid black. It belonged to my father, and he was in Korea though. And so, anyway, I polished it up and cleaned up the blade and the handle on it. And I even blued this right here across the ricasso area here and down the center of the blade. I didn't blue this part right here. But again, that's an 8-inch blade with a 5-inch handle. So that's 13 inches altogether. And interesting thing, you see the part of the tang here on the handle coming up through here. Actually, the tang is hollow through the center right here. This part of the tang is not a full metal tang. This part through here is hollow, and in the top right here, the two ends of the tang come out here, and the leather that's on here, it's made in the shape of an H, like an H, so that the middle part of the leather will go in between this tang that's cut out in the center part right here, stacked on top of each other. And it's got some different colored rings right here. I don't know if that may be like some type of plastic or micarta or something of that nature. I don't know. But that's the way they made them. And when it was put together, this right here probably just was hit right here. And I think these were probably just beaten down. That's what I'm thinking, to seal that. Some knives are done that way, hitting the pommel like that. But right here, you can see, it says Western Patent D, Western Patent D. Now, a lot of these you will see that will have Western is that they'll have Western, then they'll have Boulder, Colorado under that, and then they'll have patented D. It's believed by some, if you look at the history of the company, that before World War II began, at least before the United States got into World War II, that the company had just put Western and patented D before the war. And then when the war started and they started making knives for the government, then they started putting Boulder, Colorado, which they had moved the company to Boulder from Pennsylvania. And so they started numbering them too. You'll often see like 3 lines here on the ricasso where it'll have Western and Boulder, Colorado, then it'll have a patented number. The government's pretty sticky about having keeping up with what they purchase, I suppose. But that's one of the things that I've read about the company. I'll give you a little bit of history about the Western Company. The Western Company started out as a cutlery manufacturing company by the name of Platts, P-L-A-T-T-S and Sons, Cutlery in Gowanda, New York. And that was in 1896. Now, Charles Platt, who was an immigrant from Sheffield, England, founded the company. He had been employed in the knife making trade in Sheffield, and he knew the manufacturing process well. Charles Platt died in 1900, but his sons continued to run the company until 1905, when his son H.N. Platt bought out all the family's owners and moved the company to Bradford, Pennsylvania. Now, in 1911, Platts moved the company to Boulder, Colorado. So you'll see some of these have the name Boulder, Colorado on there. And that was 1911. Now, with the intention of taking advantage of the continuing expansion of the United States in the West, he thought he'd make a lot of these knives, no doubt. And at that time, he reestablished the company with the new name called Western Cutlery and Manufacturing Company. So that's when the name was changed. And with the coming of World War II, Western Cutlery business expanded dramatically during the wartime production. So they received, a number of U.S. government knife contracts during World War II and produced thousands of combat knives during the war. So you're going to see kind of different names on Western here, but that's the way that it is. So that's just a little history of the company. So these really are a good knife, a utilitarian knife. I remember my father using this knife when I was a kid. This knife is a lot of carbon steel in these right here. They're easy to sharpen. I mean, you can skin deer with this. The belly of this right here is pretty decent for skinning animals, deer, hogs, whatever, cutting them up. And it wasn't uncommon for them to take and hit the blade right here with a hammer to cut through bone, things like that too on some of these animals. Because you think about the 40s and 50s, that was, kind of primitive time. People had, hogs and went hunting a lot more in some ways to survive back in those days. So they used these knives for everything. So they were a great knife. For some reason, I think about Randall knives, and Randall has an interesting history if you read the story of Randall knives. But these were mass-produced and stamped out, but they have endured time and are still there today, and they're still good cutting knives and still very useful knives. Now, one thing about these knives here that I think confuses some people, you have this part right here, which is kind of like, it's been stamped out right here. It's called a fuller. It's stamped out right here. Now, some people call this blood grooves right here. I've heard people say that, if you stick, let's just say an animal like a hog or something like that, it's hard to pull the knife out because the skin squeezes the blade and creates a suction effect. So the fuller was supposed to, according to those people that say that, keep that from happening where you wouldn't have a suction on it. But really, everything I've studied about the fuller here that you see on swords and other things too is that by stamping this right here, it's thinner on the blade, but because of it being stamped, it makes the blade maybe 25 to 35% lighter than it would have been. But also because it's stamped like this right here, it makes the blade stiffer as well and stronger. So that's really the purpose of the fuller, what a lot of knife makers say, and not just to pull a knife out of something they've stuck with it, say a bear or whatever it might be. But that's another interesting thing too. Now, I would have made this a little bit longer right here on the guard. That's a pretty short guard, but that is a huge blade right there. And so this is, again, with the Western patented D, don't really see those very often. At least I haven't. You always see like Western and then Boulder, Colorado, and then a patented number underneath there. So this, according to some knife historians, these may have been the early produced ones before the war actually started. So I don't know, but I find it very interesting when you think about some of these older knives and still useful today. Okay, I couldn't find the sheath to it. May have a sheath. Have to look for that. But I do have another sheath though, kind of a fancy one here, which this blade right here will fit in. And this ruler right here gives you an idea of this 8-inch blade, not a 7. A lot of your K-bars have 7-inch blades and stuff. Other types of fighting knives too, but this is pretty hefty. Now this case looks like it's way too big, but if you put this right here by the guard, you see it's only about an inch difference right here. This would hold a 9-inch blade right here, but it looks pretty good. And that kind of reminds me of Crocodile Dundee when he said, this is a knife. So truly it is.